Hilchos Chametz U'Matzah. Rambam is going to discuss Dovish Nitzar by Chametz. We're going to discuss things that Chametz is a mixture of Chametz that's can't be eaten, or when you're liable for a Chametz for whatever minute amount there is. What is the concept of Bittul B'Shishim? That if there's 60 times the item that's forbidden, it's usually permitted. And what do you do with this mixture after Pesach? The Rambam says, Rae Gann says that this is what we just learned in the previous Halacha. Kilo aspalenis melugma or pashi ifsha, a bread that became moldy, which are mentioned in Tosefta, they're not edible. You're going to have triak v'yotzebuy. It's not the food of every person. So it says it's a medication. You put into it chametz, and it's eaten, interestingly, into kings or people that were bitten by a dog, rabid dog, or a snake. Even though you don't have to get rid of it because it's not really an edible item. Also, you can't eat it after Pesach, of course, unless you were bitten by a dog, bitten by a dog, then you can eat it. Even if there's only a drop of chometz, it's forbidden to be eaten. So Rae Gann says, only for a healthy person or a sick person that's not a sakona, it's forbidden to eat in triak or these other mixtures. But with there's a sakona, there's always a din of piguach nefesh, as doicha, as kol atera, kula, except for three main averos. Now, a bit of chametz that got mixed in, and even though it's only a bit, it's also to be eaten. The Magen Mishnah cites the Gemara in Psachim 38, chametz bizmanei, chametz during the time of Pesach, when you're not allowed to eat it. If it got mixed in both the same, in other words, it got mixed in with matzah, which is a type of bread, or it got mixed in with meat, which is not bread. It's always also, it makes everything also a mashu. And the Ritz Geus, many goyim of the opinion that even if it got mixed in before Pesach, it's forbidden to eat it on Pesach, because there's a concept here of choizer ha'isur v'neyor, that is, somehow it becomes reawakened to forbid the entire mixture. But he brings the Rishonim who say that if it got mixed in a minute amount and it was bottled once it was bottled, it's not also. Only when on Pesach itself we go with a minute amount to say it never becomes nullified. The Magen Mishnah says that you should answer all the tarubas, even when it was mixed before Pesach and even b'mashu. Halacha l'maisa, the Shulchan Aruch paskins, if chometz got mixed in before Pesach and it was bottled b'shishim, it does not come back on Pesach to make it also. Those who disagree, that's the Rambam. Like the Magen Mishnah cites in the name of Mixas HaGoinim. The Ramah writes that you are like the Sora Rishon, by balach, it was mixed, it was bottled b'shishim, ain't a choizer v'neya. So balach is not choizer v'neya. But by dry, it's a different problem. Bittul b'shishim. The Magen Mishnah adds, din of tarubas chometz is kidin every yisur in the Torah, that usually it would be bottled b'shishim. When there's no 60 times as much of the Issa, the whole thing is forbidden. The chometz is also b'mashu. This rule does not apply to chometz. Turn the page. But when the tarubis is mutter because there's less than shishim, for example, when something touches something which is fleshik touches something which is some butter and it only goes in, or something which is not buttery, something which is milky, which would just require taking off a rind that where touched, or sometimes you take a finger's breadth off. This we learn in Hilchos Chametz, that sometimes the meat that touch milk, cheese, let's say, so you can take off just the outer rind, or it was touch something which is hot without we're talking where there's no fattiness or something that's going to cause it to go and seep through the entire piece of meat. It's enough to take off a klipa. So two chametz that touch matzah, they're both hot, and there's nothing wet that's going to cause it to seep into the rest of it. It's only that place is also because it doesn't go further than that. And there are times that you need to take off, as we said, the finger breath. The Shulchan Aruch says, chametz in Pesach is also whether it's mixed with something like matzah or it's mixed with meat with the slightest amount. Mosdos says you have to burn the whole thing. The Halacha continues, this mixture is like any other mixtures, but what usually is forbidden by other things in 60, by chametz it's b'mashu. However, if you got mixed in other taruvas, you don't need shishim, even a klipa or a netilo, same thing as by chametz. That hot and hot without moisture, it's enough with a klipa, like other yisurim. So too, if chametz touched a matzah, they're both hot. There's nothing that's going to wet which will seep into the rest of it. It's only forbidden the place where it touched alone, because it will not absorb more than that. Now, what do you do with a mixture of chametz that is after Pesach? You still have it. So the Magen Mishnah seems to say infer from the Rambam, chametz that Pesach went by, since it was over by Motza, it's forbidden after Pesach. The Halacha is like Rab Shimon, shechametz remain in Rishus Yisrael at Pesach, and Yisrael was over by Motza. The Chachamim forbade it to be used after Pesach. And even though the Gemara says Rab Shimon did not forbid, and it's after Pesach, it's mutter. Here the Gemara is talking about the chametz that went through Pesach and became also Va'anor. After Pesach, it got mixed in with something else. Therefore, Rabbi Shimon doesn't say it's forbidden, because the mixture was not the Isser. But when to begin with, the mixture was the Isser, and he didn't get rid of it, there even Rabbi Shimon will agree that it's also Va'anor. And he adds, this is only B'tarubis that has a Kezayas Chometz within the time of eating an Achilles Pras. So you have an alash or motza. But if there's only a minute amount, you're not even by your everyone would agree it's not also after Pesach. Go to the next page. Now, the Lechem Mishnah asks the question. According to the Ramach, why after Pesach the Chachamim forbade its mixture, even if there's no 60? So the Ramach explained that according to the Rambam, it's forbidden to leave the taruvas, the Pesach, even when you don't have a kezayis. And he was over by Motza. According to Ramach, you can't say that the taruvas is also Va'anor after Pesach, because the Rambam Machon Nesher says the reason that chametz is also a mashu on Pesach is because you can eat it after Pesach. Therefore, it's not bottled b'shishim on Pesach itself. That's the source of the idea why it should be different than everything else, because usually you nullify something because otherwise you won't be able to eat it ever. But here, chametz you can wait after Pesach. And there's a general rule that everything that can be eaten that has the option of somehow being mutter in the future never becomes bottled midrabanan. It's only when it's mixed with a little bit. It's called a dover sheyesh lematir. Since it will be mutter after Pesach because of bittul. This svara is only possible by taruvas chometz. You're not over by your, and therefore they didn't find the Chachamim, it should be also after Pesach. According to the Ramach, that when Gezayis, even by Yosim Mikdei Achilus Pras, you're even by Yeroah, so it comes out that it should remain also after Pesach. It's not a Dovasheish Lamatirim. And why on Pesach should be also Mashu? In other words, he's asking on the basic concept that the whole reason that Chametz is also is because it's only you wait till after Pesach and eat it. Why eat it now? According to the Ramach, since it's also to keep on Pesach, it will always remain also. It will always remain also. Then why? Then it's no longer Dovasheish Lamatirim, so it should revert back to that. If it's less than 60, it should be Mutter. It should be Botel. Certainly, according to the Magen Mishnah, that you're over on Taruvas Chametz only if there's a Kezayis within a period of time. Since the Kezayis is there, it doesn't become Botel. Because there's no 60, the 60 is a Mevatalit. And since you can't possibly Mevatal this Kezayis, then after Pesach it becomes like every Chometz that after Pesach it's also about no. However, when there's no Kezayis, when there isn't a Kezayis in the Kedei Achilles Pras, you do not transgress by Yeroah. So the Rambam did not forbid you to keep the Pesach, to have it after Pesach. And therefore it's called the Dover Sheish Lamatir, and it's something that permitted, it would be permissible after Pesach. But according to the Ramach in the Rambam, that you're even by Yeroah, even when there's no Kezayis B'dei Achilles Pras. So he kept it out over Pesach and should remain also after Pesach. And how does the Rambam say this is called Dover Sheish Lamatirin? It should be also after Pesach and Rabbanan. Now the Lechem Mishnah continues that without the Ramach, I would have explained that the Magen Mishnah understanding of the Rambam is only Taruvas Chametz with the Kezayis B'Kedei Achilles Pras is also about no after Pesach because he was over on Bal Yeroah. When there's no Kezayis B'Kedei Achilles Pras, you don't transgress on Bal Yeroah, right? Therefore, the Taruvas is mutter. But if the Rambam is of the opinion like the Ramach, that he's over on Bal Yeroah, even if there's when there's no Kezayis and Kedei Achilles Pras, you can't say that after Pesach it should be mutter. And we find in Halacha Ches that the Magen Mishnah questions what is the opinion of the Rambam. Does he mean like the Ramach that he's over when there's no Kezayis B'Kedei Achilles Pras? And still he writes here that every type of Taruvus is also Achar Pesach, that would be even by something that has less than a Kezayis in a Kedei Achilles Pras. Why shouldn't it be mutter? Because then it never would be mutter. It's a dover. It's not a dover. Kachol dover she'ein loy matirin. It should be mutter like anything that doesn't have matirin. The Lechem Mishnah explains, since the Rambam is the opinion that when there's no Kezayis, even a more Achilles Pras, you're not oivram Bal Yeroah, even though you're forbidden to keep it. Therefore, it's not forbidden after Pesach. That's why Chametz is also Mashu, because it's Dover Sheish Lamatirin L'Chilku Chachamim. Therefore, the Chachamim didn't make a differentiation. They said any mixture of Chametz, whatever the reasoning might be, they just make a rule. Whether it has a Kedei Achilles Kezayis or Kedei Achilles Pras or not, it doesn't matter that after Pesach it will still be forbidden. They always said this rule applies. That the Chachamim didn't want to make differentiations. We find this very often. The Chachamim made a clear din, a set rule, even though sometimes a set measure, even though sometimes that measure doesn't apply, because here too, even though, yes, if there would not be a Kezayis and Kedei Achilles Pras, technically you should say, if you're going to make it osur, then it's not very double sheish matiram. This is the rule of chometz. It's also b'mashu, because when you do have a kezayis b'dei achilus pras, then you're over on bayiro bayimot. Since there's instances where you would be over, therefore they forbade it in all instances. But the Halacha Mishnah concludes that the Divrei Magen Mishnah, who says that it would seem from the Rambam that it was chometz, that your over bayiro is forbidden after Pesach, like every other chometz. I didn't see a reason. I can't really comprehend completely what the Rambam means, because that it should be specifically so, because the Rambam just said in Perek Aleph, Chometz Shavuot Pesach also. It doesn't write Terubas Chometz over there. It doesn't say mixture. So it would seem that he makes a differentiation between Chometz and Terubas Chometz. Halacha l'maisa. Shulchan Aruch in Siman 442. Says Terubas Chometz Ye'over Mishum Ba'yiro Ba'yimotza. The Mishnah Brewer explains, according to the Mechaber, Ye'over, even when there's no Kezayis Chometz B'kdei Achilus Pras. Even though regarding achila, there's no chiyuv chorus. When there's no, you can't eat. You didn't eat a kezayis, and there are even those who saying you're not over alav. Still, as far as by your motza, you're over, even though there's less than a kezayis with the achilus pras, because every part of the kezayis chometz is found in a kli echod. In other words, the kezayis in this vessel, and that puts them together. And he say in the Sharatzian says that the Mechaber agrees with the case of Mishnah in the in the fact of understanding of the Rambam, like the Ramach, that it's also, and when he wrote the Shulchan Aruch, the Lashon Rambam, this was his intent, and the Gemara writes as well. Right? The Mishnah Brewer says in the name of Magen Avraham, another Achronim, that you're over on bayiro only when it's chometz mixed in with meat, for example. The Minat Torah, it doesn't get bottle baroiv, according to those, not like the Rambam, who hold tamki ikor is their raisa, that the taste is, even though you have no actual substance, but you have the taste, that's like having the substance itself. Therefore we say, because I has chometz, which should not become nullified, because you have the taste, because it's a separate taste. But if you had Chametz U'Matzah, or wheat of Tvua that became chometzdik, that you mix it with wheat of Tvua that didn't become chometzdik, Midaraisa, then if it's 51% not chometz, then the rest is bottle. You can even eat it. Certainly you can leave it on Pesach. Racham forbade it. Maybe you come to eat it on Pesach, and therefore you have to get rid of it before Pesach. And if he remembers on Pesach, he has to get rid of it on Pesach. If he left it till after Pesach, it's mutter, because he was not over by your motza, which is the rice, and there's a majority of non-chometz here. Also, if we had 60 against the chometz, even if it's mixed, if it's mixed, even by something which is meat and chometz, for example, it's mutter after Pesach. Why? Because only the Rabbanan chometz is also b'mashu. Minat Torah is bottle b'shisha. And therefore you weren't over Minat Torah, and therefore the Racham didn't forbade it after Pesach. So to other things where there's no Issur D'Oraisa, only Midrabanan, you have to get rid of them on Erev Pesach, and if you forgot that after Pesach, or he found it on Pesach, he has to burn it. Only so that you shouldn't eat it. But if you didn't get rid of them, after Pesach, then mutar ba'achila. Mishnah Berurah adds furthermore, this is only when you have a mixture of chometz which is actually there. There's a mixture. But if the chometz is not there, that rather he cooked something with chometz and then he took away the chometz. So now we only have the taste of chometz that's in there. If there was it wasn't 60 times the amount of chometz. It's also to eat it in the Torah, because we say tam ki'ika, that the taste is like the original thing would be there. But the lav of li'roa, the Yaakov has a question. He shouldn't be over, because there's no actual issa. Still midrabanan, it's also to leave it. And needs beer, if it's found on Pesach, she shouldn't come to eat it. But if you left it after Pesach, there's no Issa no. Since that he wasn't Oivan Issa Torah, the Hachomim did not forbid it after Pesach. And even eating it after Pesach, it's Kedai to be Machmer, but there's no Issa. And he brings further proof. There are those who opinion that since the taruv is osura ba'achilo minat Torah, he has to get rid of him minat Torah. If he didn't get rid of them, after Pesach it will remain also. The Mishnah Berurah says if it's a big hefsid, you can be makel like the first day. And the Mishnah Berurah concludes, this is only with food items that get received the time of chometz. Just that he took it away, and there's only the time. But something was cooked in a pot that had chometz. Let's assume you cooked the soup before a potato soup before Pesach, and you put it in your freezer, and then after Pesach you remember that you did not use the chometz to get pot, which technically whatever's in the pot will not nullify that which is in the walls of the pot. So you can even keep it if you know about it before Pesach, if you put it away in, let's say, a freezer that you don't use for Pesach. Otherwise, or he says this is only specifically where it's not in a vessel that's of chometz, meaning like if you take it and put it into a new aluminum pan. But if it was cooked or pickled on Pesach, like kli chometz, even if it's that kli chometz is after it's more than 2 or 3 days since you used it for chometz, you have to get rid of it because of the mashu that's in there. The Mishnah writes further, what the Machaber says, Tarubas chometz, the mixture of chometz you transgress, by your motzis, only this is by a mixture where you had actual chometz. But chometz nuksha, where you had something that was an original ingredient, you're not even by your only midrabanan, you have to get rid of it. Chometz nuksha is, as we said before, was like glue that you use for papers. And we're not sure if it got chometz or not, or it's no longer edible. And it was never edible, but if it was once edible, then the only time would be ready to keep it on Pesach as if a dog will not eat it, as we learned earlier in the previous chapters, previous halachas. Machaber brings certain instances, Marias, all of those are things that can be eaten. But something that has a taruz chometz and you can't eat it, like something that's filling a crack in the wall, you can leave it on Pesach, like skins that you put it in together with flour, which is chometz, not flour, which is flour that water touched it before Pesach. Then, as long as it's before Pesach, it's mutter. You can keep it. The skins, you're not over on chometz shabbat over Pesach. And if you didn't put in the skins and you put the flour 3 days before, so then you can assume it has been spoiled within 3 days. You have to get rid of it. So same thing applies to bandages and medications. All of that, if you can keep it on Pesach because it's no longer considered like Pesach. The Chaber continues, the bread itself that became moldy and you can't eat it, the dog can't eat it, or a bandage that became spoiled, You don't have to burn it. Siv Gimel, garments that you washed with starch or paper that you glued it with chametz, you can keep it on Pesach because the chametz is not there. So the Mishnah Berurah writes, the Achronim say, you shouldn't put on the table these. Let's assume if you had a tablecloth that you have it in starch, because sometimes you actually have a little bit of chametz. Maybe that'll break off and you'll eat it. And that's a mashu. Even though it's a minute amount, you're forbidden to eat it. And certainly, you can't place into these sheets or tablecloths Pesach flour. For that very reason. There were more ants. You can glue paper in a wall. You know, they used to cover their windows. They didn't have shades, I guess. They used to cover the windows with paper that was attached with glue that was made from chametz. And there are those who are more stringent because outside you see that the chametz is sticking into the glass. Mechaber continues, if something got mixed with chametz, but it's not a food item, or it's not everybody doesn't eat it, it's only eaten by certain people in certain circumstances when they're sick, even though you can keep it, you can't eat it till after Pesach. And even though it doesn't have much chametz, only a minute amount. The more answers adds that in Siman 447 will mention that something that you can use if it became bottled before Pesach, that, like the Maggid Mishnah says, that if the Tarus Chametz became before Pesach, we don't say Choyzer V'Neo. We don't say Choyzer V'Neo. More answers, you don't say Choyzer V'Neo. Once it was nullified, it became nullified.